My name is Nancy. I'm 58 years old, and until last month, I thought my daughter Amanda and I had an unbreakable bond. That changed with one violent push that sent me crashing into my dining table. As I lay in the emergency room with 6 stitches above my eye, my phone lit up with a text, "Stay away from us." After 15 years of sacrificing everything as a single mom, this is how my only child repaid me. I stared at my reflection at the purple bruise spreading across my face and made a decision that would change everything. Before I tell you about the life-altering punch from my own flesh and blood, let me know where you're watching from today. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my stories. And if you've ever had to make a difficult choice between your own well-being and family loyalty, this story might give you the courage you've been looking for. When I think back to our life before everything fell apart, I can still see Amanda as a bright-eyed little girl running to greet her father when he came home from work. My husband, Thomas, was a successful building contractor who had built our beautiful 4-bedroom home with his own hands. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we lived comfortably in a nice suburb of Boston. Thomas adored Amanda, our only child, and would spend every weekend teaching her something new: how to ride a bike, how to swing a hammer, how to calculate the area of a room. They had a special bond that warmed my heart. But all that changed when Amanda turned 17. Thomas had been complaining about heartburn for weeks, brushing off my concerns with his usual, "It's nothing, Nance, just too much coffee." One ordinary Tuesday morning, he collapsed while getting ready for work. The paramedics tried everything, but it was too late. A massive heart attack took him from us in an instant. Amanda was devastated. She had been Daddy's little girl, and now he was gone. The night after the funeral, I found her sitting in his closet, wrapped in one of his flannel shirts, sobbing uncontrollably. I sat with her until sunrise, holding her as we both tried to process a world without Thomas. The financial reality hit quickly after that. Thomas had some life insurance, but not nearly enough. I discovered he had been struggling with the business for the past year, but hadn't wanted to worry me. There were outstanding loans, unpaid suppliers, and barely enough in our savings to cover 3 months of expenses. I had been working part-time as a bookkeeper, but now I needed to step up. I took on full-time work at an accounting firm plus weekend shifts at a local department store. Some nights I would come home so exhausted that I could barely make dinner before collapsing into bed. But I never let Amanda see how hard it was. She was already dealing with enough grief. Even with my 2 jobs, we couldn't afford to keep our house. 6 months after Thomas died, I made the painful decision to sell the home he had built for us. We moved to a 2-bedroom apartment across town that cost half as much in monthly payments. I gave Amanda the larger bedroom and took the smaller one for myself. I wanted to preserve as much normalcy as possible for her. Through it all, Amanda showed remarkable resilience. She maintained her perfect GPA, stayed active in school clubs, and even got a part-time job at the library to help with expenses. I was so proud of her strength and determination. We grew closer during that difficult time, often staying up late talking about Thomas, about the future, about her dreams of becoming a lawyer like her grandfather had been. When college acceptance letters started arriving, I held my breath. Amanda had applied to several prestigious schools, and I knew that even with scholarships, the cost would be astronomical. When she got into Columbia Law School with a partial scholarship, she was ecstatic. I didn't have the heart to tell her we might not be able to afford it, even with the scholarship. That night, after she went to bed, I sat at our tiny kitchen table with a calculator and our bank statements. The numbers simply didn't add up. Then I remembered Thomas's life insurance policy. I had been saving that money for emergencies, but what could be more important than Amanda's education? I decided then and there that I would use every penny of it to help her achieve her dreams. There were other opportunities for me during those years, chances to date, even a marriage proposal from a kind man at my accounting firm, but I always declined. Amanda needed stability, not a new father figure in her life who might complicate things. Besides, no one could ever replace Thomas in my heart. I chose instead to focus entirely on being both mother and father to Amanda, ensuring she had everything she needed to succeed. The apartment we lived in wasn't in the best neighborhood. Sometimes I'd hear gunshots in the distance at night, and the walls were so thin that we could hear our neighbors arguing. But it was clean, and it was ours, and it allowed me to save enough for Amanda's education. I never complained about the leaky faucet or the temperamental heating system. Those were small inconveniences compared to the importance of Amanda's future. During her college years, I worked overtime whenever possible, often pulling 60-hour weeks between my 2 jobs. I still managed to call her every evening to check in, and she would tell me about her classes, her professors, and the friends she was making. I lived vicariously through her stories, proud of the confident young woman she was becoming. I remember the day she graduated from law school as one of the happiest of my life. Yeah. Sitting in the audience, watching her walk across the stage in her cap and gown, I felt like all those years of sacrifice had been worth it. Thomas would have been so proud. That night, I gave her a locket with his picture inside, and we both cried as she put it on. After graduation, Amanda was hired by a prestigious law firm in Manhattan. Her starting salary was more than I had ever made in my life, and I felt such relief knowing that she would be financially secure. She found a small apartment in Brooklyn with 2 roommates, and I helped her move in, decorating her bedroom with photos and small mementos from home. For several years after that, our relationship flourished. We spoke on the phone almost daily, and I would take the bus into the city every other Sunday to have brunch with her. She would tell me about her cases, her colleagues, and occasionally a date that hadn't gone well. I was her confidant, her biggest supporter, and her safe place to land when things got tough. Little did I know that our close bond was about to be severely tested. Amanda was 29 when she first mentioned Jake during one of our phone calls. He had joined her law firm as a senior associate, transferred from their Chicago office. "He's brilliant, Mom," she told me, her voice taking on a girlish quality I hadn't heard in years. "He graduated top of his class at Yale and has already won 3 major cases this year." From the beginning, something about Jake made me uneasy. Maybe it was Mother's intuition, or maybe it was the way Amanda suddenly started canceling our brunches because Jake had spontaneously invited her to exclusive events. He was 37, never married, and according to Amanda, came from a wealthy Connecticut family with political connections. I first met Jake 3 weeks after they began dating. Amanda brought him to dinner at my apartment, an unprecedented move since she usually preferred meeting in the city. I spent the entire day cleaning and cooking, wanting to make a good impression. When they arrived, Jake looked around my modest apartment with barely concealed disdain. He was handsome in that polished corporate way, perfect haircut, expensive watch, custom suit, but his smile never reached his eyes. "So this is where Amanda grew up," he said, running his finger along my bookshelf and checking for dust. "Actually, we moved here after her father died," I explained, trying to keep my tone light. "Our family home was much larger, but this place has served us well." Jake nodded dismissively. "My mother always says that a home reflects the character of its owner. She's maintained our family estate impeccably since my father passed." Throughout dinner, Jake dominated the conversation, talking about his cases, his connections, his plans for partnership. When I asked Amanda about her work, Jake would answer for her or redirect the conversation back to himself. I noticed how she deferred to him, checking his expression before speaking, laughing too loudly at his jokes. As they were leaving, I hugged Amanda and whispered, "Call me tomorrow." She nodded, but the call never came. When I finally reached her 3 days later, she seemed distant, making excuses about being busy with work. Over the next few months, I watched my daughter slowly transform. Her wardrobe changed from comfortable professional attire to designer outfits that Jake approved of. Her hair, which she had always worn naturally curly like mine, was now straightened and highlighted. Even her speech patterns changed, adopting Jake's clipped, formal tone. The most alarming change was in our communication. Where once we had spoken daily, now weeks would go by with only brief text messages. When I asked about visiting, there was always some reason why the timing wasn't right. Jake was preparing for a big case. They had plans with his friends. They were viewing apartments in a more prestigious neighborhood. When Amanda did call, she was often distracted, our conversations punctuated by long silences as she presumably texted or emailed someone else simultaneously. I began to hear Jake's opinions coming out of Amanda's mouth. "Mom, you really should consider moving to a better neighborhood," she said during one call. "Jake says it's embarrassing telling his colleagues where his girlfriend's mother lives." I tried to talk to Amanda about my concerns, gently questioning whether things were moving too fast with Jake. Her response was immediate and defensive. "Jake is the best thing that's happened to me, Mom. He's helping me improve myself and my career prospects. Maybe you're just jealous that I have someone in my life now." The accusation stung, but I backed off. I didn't want to push her away completely. I kept telling myself that this was just a phase that she would eventually see through Jake's controlling behavior. 8 months into their relationship, Amanda called to tell me they were engaged. Jake had proposed at a charity gala in front of his firm's partners and clients. The wedding was set for just 3 months later, an unusually short engagement that Jake had insisted upon. I had always imagined being involved in my daughter's wedding planning, shopping for her dress, helping with invitations, offering motherly advice. Instead, I was relegated to the role of distant observer. Jake's mother, Vivian, took charge of everything from the venue, a country club where their family had been members for generations, to the guest list heavily weighted toward Jake's family and connections. When I offered to contribute financially to the wedding, Amanda told me that Jake's parents were covering everything. "They want to do it properly, Mom," she said, the implication being that I couldn't provide the kind of wedding Jake deemed appropriate. I was allowed to accompany Amanda to one dress fitting, where Vivian dominated the proceedings, insisting on a style that Amanda had never expressed interest in before. I sat quietly in the corner, watching my daughter's reflection in the mirror, searching for signs of the independent young woman I had raised. All I saw was someone desperate to please her future mother-in-law and fiancé. The wedding day itself was beautiful but cold. The ceremony took place in an historic church filled with elaborate floral arrangements and Boston's elite. I wore a blue dress I had splurged on, wanting to look my best. As I walked Amanda down the aisle, a role I took on in Thomas's absence, I whispered how beautiful she looked and how proud her father would have been. She squeezed my arm but said nothing. At the reception, I found my seat at a table far from the main wedding party. I was seated with distant relatives of Jake's and a few of Amanda's colleagues from work. There was no mother-daughter dance, no special toast acknowledging our journey together. When I approached Amanda between courses, Jake smoothly intercepted, steering me away with a firm hand on my elbow. "Amanda needs to circulate with the senior partners," he explained. "Career networking never stops, Nancy. You understand." As I watched my daughter move through the reception on Jake's arm, greeting people she barely knew, with practiced smiles, I felt a profound sense of loss. The Amanda I knew was disappearing before my eyes, replaced by Jake's idea of the perfect wife. I drove home alone that night, passing the exit to our old family home, thinking about how Thomas would have reacted to Jake. He wouldn't have stood for it, I was certain. But Thomas wasn't here, and I had failed to protect our daughter from a man who seemed determined to erase her past, and me along with it. After the wedding, the distance between Amanda and me grew exponentially. What had been weekly calls became monthly, then bi-monthly. What had been Sunday brunches became occasional coffee meetings that Jake would often attend, checking his watch throughout and making sure the conversation revolved around topics he approved of. During the first year of their marriage, I saw Amanda in person only 5 times. Each time she seemed more reserved, more careful with her words. She had dark circles under her eyes that she tried to conceal with makeup, and she had lost weight, her wedding ring sliding loosely on her finger. When I called, Jake would often answer her phone explaining that Amanda was busy or resting. "I'll have her call you back, Hita," he would say, but the return calls rarely came. When they did, I could hear Jake in the background sometimes making comments about keeping it brief or asking who she was talking to in a tone that suggested he already knew the answer. I tried to maintain our connection any way I could. I sent birthday cards, holiday gifts, and occasional care packages with homemade cookies, the kind Amanda had loved as a child. I would slip in little notes reminding her of happy memories or inside jokes we shared. I never knew if she actually received these packages or if Jake intercepted them. For Christmas that first year, I invited them to my apartment for dinner. I spent days cleaning and decorating, putting up the artificial tree that Thomas had bought our first year together. I cooked all of Amanda's favorite dishes and even purchased an expensive bottle of scotch for Jake, hoping to make him feel welcome. They arrived an hour late with no apology. Jake immediately commented on the quaintness of my Christmas decorations, comparing them unfavorably to his mother's professional holiday decor. Amanda sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, barely touching the appetizers I had prepared. When I asked about their life together, Jake dominated the conversation, talking about his latest case and their plans to renovate their apartment. "We're thinking of converting the second bedroom into a proper home office," he said. "It's not like we'll be needing a nursery anytime soon." I noticed how Amanda flinched at this comment, her eyes darting to mine and then quickly away. I had always assumed she wanted children. She had talked about being a mother since she was a teenager. But when I gently asked about their future family plans, Jake answered before she could. "Amanda's career is taking off," he said firmly. "Children would be a distraction right now, maybe in 5 years if she makes partner." As I served dinner, I tried to engage Amanda, directly asking about her cases and colleagues. She began to respond more freely briefly, showing flashes of her old self as she described a pro bono case she was passionate about. Jake watched her with narrowed eyes, then smoothly interrupted. "That's enough shop talk, darling," he said, placing his hand over hers on the table. "Nancy doesn't want to hear about boring legal details." "Actually, I'd love to hear more," I countered, smiling at Amanda. "It sounds fascinating." Jake's jaw tightened. "Well, I'm sure Amanda would rather hear about your life, Nancy. Any new men on the horizon? It must be lonely in this apartment all by yourself." The question was designed to embarrass me, and it worked. Amanda looked uncomfortable, and I fumbled for a response. Before I could answer, Jake's phone rang. He made a show of checking the caller ID. "It's Mother," he announced. "I should take this." He stepped away from the table, leaving Amanda and me in awkward silence. When he returned 10 minutes later, he announced they needed to leave. His mother had invited them for dessert at her home. "But I made your favorite apple pie," I said to Amanda, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "We really need to go," Amanda replied softly. "Thanks for dinner, Mom." As they were putting on their coats, I handed Amanda a small gift bag containing a silver photo frame with a picture of her and Thomas at her high school graduation. "A little early Christmas present," I explained. "I thought you might like to have this for your home." Amanda took the bag, hesitantly glancing at Jake. "Thank you," she murmured. Later that night, I found the gift bag sitting on the entry table, forgotten in their hasty departure. I cried myself to sleep that Christmas Eve, clutching the frame that held memories of a happier time. Despite the growing distance, I never stopped trying to maintain our relationship. I would find reasons to reach out, sending articles related to her legal specialties, asking innocent questions about holiday plans, suggesting lunch dates in neutral locations near her office. Most of these overtures were met with polite but firm rejections. Occasionally, I would overhear things during our rare phone conversations. Once I called when Jake didn't realize Amanda had answered the phone. I heard him in the background saying, "Is that your mother again? Tell her we're busy. She calls too damn much." Another time, I heard him refer to me as pathetic when Amanda mentioned I had invited them for Thanksgiving. The most revealing incident came when I managed to meet Amanda for a quick coffee near her office. Jake called 3 times during our 30-minute visit. On the third call, Amanda stepped away to speak with him privately, but I could still hear her end of the conversation. "Yes, I'm still with her. No, we're just having coffee. I know what time it is. We've been over this, Jake. Yes, I'll be back in the office in 15 minutes. When she returned to the table, her hands were shaking. "I need to get back, son," she said, gathering her things. "Jake says the senior partner is looking for me." As she stood to leave, I reached for her hand. "Amanda, honey, is everything okay? You know, you can talk to me about anything." For a moment, she seemed on the verge of opening up. Then her expression shuddered. "Everything's fine, Mom. I just have a lot of pressure at work right now, and I need my space. You have to understand that I'm an adult with my own life." "I know that, sweetheart. I just miss you." "Well, maybe you should focus more on your own life instead of trying to micromanage mine," she snapped, using words that sounded exactly like something Jake would say. "I need to go." I watched her walk away, her shoulders tense, her stride hurried. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her completely, that Jake was systematically cutting every tie that bound us together. But I had no idea how to fight back without pushing her further into his controlling arms. Over the next several months, our contact dwindled to almost nothing. I would send texts that went unanswered for days, if at all. I would leave voicemails that were never returned. I tried to respect her need for space, but it felt less like giving an adult daughter room to live her own life and more like being systematically erased from that life altogether. Then, after nearly 4 months of almost no contact, my phone rang with Amanda's number. I almost dropped it in my haste to answer. It was a Tuesday evening in early April when my phone lit up with Amanda's name. I had just gotten home from work, my feet aching from standing all day at the department store where I still worked weekends. I answered immediately, my heart racing with a mixture of hope and anxiety. "Mom." Amanda's voice sounded different, excited, almost breathless. It had been so long since I'd heard any positive emotion in her tone that I was momentarily speechless. "Amanda, it's so good to hear your voice, sweetheart. How are you?" I'm great, Mom, really great. Listen, something amazing has happened, and I wanted to tell you about it. I sat down at my kitchen table, pushing aside the stack of bills I'd been about to sort through. I'm all ears, honey. Jake and I found a house. She said the words, tumbling out in a rush. It's absolutely perfect. A brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, with original hardwood floors and crown molding. It even has a small garden in the back. We've been looking for months and we finally found it. That sounds wonderful, I said, genuinely happy to hear the excitement in her voice. Brooklyn Heights is a beautiful area. It's perfect, Mom. There are great schools nearby and it's only a 20-minute subway ride to the office. She paused and I caught the significance of her mentioning schools. Was she planning for children now? The thing is, she continued, her voice taking on a hesitant quality. We need to move quickly. There are other buyers interested and we need to put down a substantial deposit to secure it. I felt a familiar tightening in my chest. The sensation I always got when money was being discussed. I see, and how much is this house? 1.2 million, she said quickly, as if getting the number out fast would make it seem smaller. I know it sounds like a lot, but for the neighborhood and the size, it's actually a really good deal. The market is so competitive right now. I did some quick mental calculations. Amanda was doing well at her firm and Jake was a senior associate. Together, they must have been making a comfortable living. But property in New York was notoriously expensive, and a 20% down payment would be $240,000, a sum that seemed difficult for even two successful lawyers to have saved so early in their careers. Before I could formulate a response, I heard Jake's voice in the background, and then he was on the phone. Nancy, Jake here. How are you? His tone was warmer than I'd ever heard it, almost friendly. I'm fine, Jake. Amanda was just telling me about the house you found. It sounds lovely. It's perfect for us, he said smoothly. The kind of place where we can really put down roots. We've been saving for this, but as I'm sure you know, New York real estate waits for no one. We need to move quickly to secure it. I heard the subtle emphasis on the word quickly and understood what was coming next. Amanda mentioned that Thomas left an insurance policy. Jake continued. She said you've been holding on to that money all these years. Very prudent of you. I felt a flash of anger. That money was something I had discussed privately with Amanda years ago. The fact that she had shared this information with Jake felt like a betrayal of confidence. The policy wasn't very large, I said carefully, and most of it went toward Amanda's education. But there's still a portion remaining, isn't there? Jake pressed. Amanda seems to think there might be enough to help with our down payment. It would be a sound investment in our future, in your daughter's future. I was silent for a moment, processing his words. There was indeed money left from Thomas's life insurance, about $175,000 that I had carefully preserved through years of frugal living. It was my safety net, my retirement fund, the cushion that let me sleep at night, knowing I wouldn't be destitute in my old age. Mom, Amanda was back on the line, her voice taking on a pleading quality. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. This house is perfect, and it would mean so much to have your help, especially now. Especially now. I repeated something in her tone, catching my attention. I was going to wait to tell you in person, but I'm pregnant, Mom, 10 weeks along. We're going to have a baby. The news hit me like a physical force. A grandchild. Thomas's grandchild. Despite everything, joy welled up inside me. Oh, Amanda, that's wonderful news. Congratulations, sweetheart. So, you see why this house is so important, she continued. We need more space, and the neighborhood has excellent schools. It's where we want to raise your grandchild. The emotional manipulation was transparent but effective. How could I refuse to help provide a home for my unborn grandchild? Jake had clearly coached her on exactly how to approach me for the money. Let me think about it, okay? I said finally. This is a big decision, and I need a little time. We don't have much time, Mom, Amanda pressed. We need to make an offer by Friday. I'll call you tomorrow, I promised. I just need to look at my finances and see what's possible. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time staring at nothing. A grandchild. A new life. Despite my misgivings about Jake and his influence over Amanda, I couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. Perhaps a baby would soften. Jake would bring Amanda back to me in a way nothing else could. I spent that night reviewing my finances, looking at what I could realistically contribute. The $175,000 from Thomas's insurance was almost everything I had beyond my modest retirement account. Giving it away would mean working well into my 70s, maybe longer. But what was money compared to family? What would Thomas want me to do? By morning, I had made my decision. I would help them, but in a way that protected both Amanda and myself. Instead of simply giving them the money, I would co-sign on their mortgage using my savings as collateral. This would give them the financial backing they needed while ensuring I remained connected to the investment. I called my bank and scheduled an appointment with a mortgage specialist for that afternoon. The process was more complex than I had anticipated. Given the size of the loan and my limited income, the bank suggested I become a co-owner of the property rather than just a co-signer on the loan. This would provide additional security for all parties involved. By Thursday, I had all the paperwork in order. I called Amanda to share my decision. "I've worked it out with the bank," I told her. "I can help you secure the mortgage by becoming a co-owner on the property. I'll contribute $175,000 toward the down payment." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Co-owner," Amanda finally said, her tone uncertain. "It's just a formality," I assured her. "It's the best way for the bank to structure the loan given my income level. It doesn't change anything about how you and Jake will live in and enjoy the house." "I need to discuss this with Jake," she said. "He was expecting a more straightforward arrangement." "I understand, but this protects everyone involved. Let me know what you decide, but the bank says we need to move quickly if we want to secure the loan in time for your offer." After another hesitation, Amanda agreed to talk it over with Jake and get back to me. She called back that evening to say they would proceed with my proposal. We made arrangements to meet at my apartment the following night to review the final paperwork before submitting the offer. I spent all day Friday preparing for their visit. I cleaned my apartment thoroughly, bought fresh flowers for the table, and prepared Amanda's favorite meal, roast chicken with garlic mashed potatoes and green beans almondine. I even splurged on an expensive bottle of sparkling cider for Amanda given her pregnancy. I also purchased a small gift, a soft yellow baby blanket that I wrapped carefully in tissue paper. Despite my concerns about Jake, I was genuinely excited about becoming a grandmother. This baby represented a new chapter for our family, a connection to Thomas that would continue into the future. As I set the table with my best dishes, the ones Thomas and I had received as wedding gifts decades ago, I felt a cautious optimism. Perhaps this financial arrangement would bring Amanda and me closer together again. Perhaps having a child of her own would help her understand the depth of a mother's love and bridge the gap that had grown between us. I had no idea that instead of healing our relationship, this dinner would destroy it completely. I had set dinner for 7 o'clock, but by 7:30 there was still no sign of Amanda and Jake. I called Amanda's cell phone twice, getting her voicemail both times. At 7:45, just as I was considering whether to go ahead and eat alone, my doorbell rang. They entered my apartment like reluctant visitors to a foreign country. Jake didn't remove his coat, an expensive camel hair affair that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Amanda looked tired with dark circles under her eyes, partially concealed by makeup. Neither apologized for being late. "Something smells good," Amanda said, offering a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Roast chicken, your favorite," I replied, taking their coats despite Jake's reluctance to hand his over. "And I have sparkling cider for you, Amanda, given your condition." Jake surveyed my living room with the same thinly veiled disdain he always showed for my apartment. "Still haven't replaced that sofa, I see," he commented, referring to my well-worn but comfortable couch. "My mother always says furniture should be updated every 5 years to maintain standards." I bit back a retort about priorities and budgets, instead gesturing toward the dining table. "Everything's ready. Let's eat while it's hot." The tension was palpable as we sat down to dinner. Jake immediately began critiquing the meal, commenting that the chicken was a bit dry and the potatoes could use more seasoning. Amanda remained mostly silent, picking at her food and avoiding eye contact. I tried to keep the conversation light, asking about their work and the house they hoped to buy. Jake dominated the discussion as usual, detailing the property's features and location with proprietary pride as if he already owned it. The previous owners clearly had no sense of style, he said between bites. We'll need to gut the kitchen immediately and update all the bathrooms. Amanda's firm has a client who's an interior designer. Very exclusive, only works with the right people. That sounds expensive, I commented mildly. Will you be able to afford renovations right after purchasing the house? Jake's expression hardened. My family has connections in the construction industry. We'll get preferential rates. I nodded, turning to Amanda. And how are you feeling, sweetheart? Any morning sickness? Before she could answer, Jake chid in. Amanda's been perfectly fine. Her doctor says she's in excellent health. Top obstetrician in the city. Took some strings to get an appointment, but my mother knows the hospital board chairman. That's wonderful, I said, still looking at Amanda. But how are you feeling emotionally? Pregnancy can be a roller coaster. Amanda glanced quickly at Jake before responding. I'm fine, Mom. Just busy with work. And now the house hunting. There's a lot going on. I reached across the table to squeeze her hand. Well, I'm here if you need anything at all, day or night. Jake cleared his throat loudly. Speaking of the house, we should really discuss the financial arrangements. The seller is expecting our offer first thing tomorrow morning. I nodded, getting up to retrieve the folder of documents I had prepared. I've got everything ready. The bank has approved the mortgage with me as co-owner, contributing $175,000 toward the down payment. Jake frowned as I spread the papers on the cleared dining table. Co-owner, I thought Amanda explained that we were looking for a straightforward loan or gift. This is the arrangement the bank recommended, I explained patiently. Given my income and the size of the loan, they suggested I become a co-owner rather than just a co-signer. It protects everyone involved. Jake's face darkened as he scanned the documents. This gives you a 20% ownership stake in our home, he said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. It's proportional to my contribution to the down payment, I explained. But it doesn't affect your day-to-day ownership or use of the property. It's simply a legal formality for the bank's benefit. Absolutely not, Jake said flatly, pushing the papers away. We're not having your name on our property deed. I was taken aback by his vehemence. Jake, this is standard practice for this type of financial arrangement. The bank requires— I don't care what the bank requires, he interrupted. Find another way. We're not having a third party with legal rights to our home. I'm hardly a third party, I said, feeling a flare of anger. I'm Amanda's mother. I'm the grandmother of your child. That's precisely the problem, Jake snapped. You already try to insert yourself into every aspect of our lives. Giving you legal rights to our home would be a nightmare. I looked at Amanda, expecting her to defend me, to explain to Jake that his fears were unfounded. Instead, she sat silently staring at her plate. Amanda, I prompted gently, what do you think about this arrangement? She glanced up, her expression conflicted. I thought you were giving us the money, Mom. I didn't realize there would be all these conditions. Her words stung. It's not about conditions, Amanda. It's about finding a way to help you that works within my financial reality. I'm not a wealthy woman. This represents almost all of my savings. Then maybe you shouldn't offer what you can't afford, Jake said coldly. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. I can afford to help. I want to help. But the bank has requirements for a loan of this size, and this is the solution they've proposed. It's controlling, Amanda suddenly blurted out. Just like everything else, Mom. You're trying to control us. I was stunned. Control you, Amanda? I've given you nothing but independence and support your entire life. You call every week, she countered, her voice rising. You're always asking to visit, to have dinner, to be involved. And now you want your name on our house. I call because I love you, I said, fighting back tears. Because you're my only child and I miss you. And yes, I want to be involved in your life. Is that so terrible? See, Jake? Amanda turned to her husband. This is exactly what I was talking about. The guilt trips, the emotional manipulation. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Manipulation, Amanda? When have I ever manipulated you? You're doing it right now, she exclaimed. Making this about your feelings about how much you miss me instead of respecting our boundaries. What boundaries? I asked, genuinely confused. All I've done is offer to help you buy a house you said you desperately wanted. With strings attached, Jake interjected. With your name on the deed so you can hold it over our heads forever. That's not my intention at all, I protested. The co-ownership is the bank's requirement, not mine. Then find a bank with different requirements, Jake said dismissively. Or better yet, just give Amanda the money directly. It's her inheritance anyway. That statement ignited something in me. Her inheritance? That money doesn't come from some family trust fund, Jake. It comes from the life insurance policy of a man who worked with his hands every day to provide for his family. A man who died too young, leaving me to raise our daughter alone. I've preserved that money through 15 years of sacrifice and careful budgeting. I turned to Amanda, who was now staring at me with a mixture of anger and something else, perhaps shame. I have never denied you anything I could possibly provide, Amanda. I worked 2 jobs to put you through college. I gave up opportunities for companionship and remarriage to focus on your needs. And I have never, ever asked for anything in return except to remain a part of your life. That's not fair, Amanda said, her voice shaking. You can't hold your sacrifices over me forever. I didn't ask you to give up your life for me. I didn't give up my life, I corrected her. I chose to prioritize you in my life. There's a difference. This is exactly the toxic dynamic I was talking about, Jake said to Amanda, as if I wasn't sitting right there. The martyr mother who uses her sacrifices as weapons. I felt as if I'd been slapped. That's an incredibly cruel thing to say. I told him, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. I have never used my love for Amanda as a weapon. Then prove it, he challenged. Give her the money with no strings attached, no co-ownership, no conditions, no expectations of increased involvement in our lives. I looked between them, suddenly seeing the situation with painful clarity. This wasn't about the house at all. It was about Jake's desire to completely sever Amanda's ties to me, to eliminate my presence from their lives, except when it was financially beneficial. I stood up slowly, gathering the mortgage documents into the folder. I think we need to take a step back, I said as calmly as I could. This arrangement clearly isn't working for any of us. Perhaps we should reconsider whether my financial involvement is the right approach. What are you saying? Amanda demanded. Are you withdrawing your offer? I'm saying we need to find a solution that respects everyone's concerns, I replied, including mine. Jake stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is ridiculous. We don't have time for your games, Nancy. Either you help Amanda as any decent mother would, or you don't. I am trying to help, I said firmly. But I won't be spoken to like this in my own home. Your home, Jake sneered, gesturing around my modest apartment. This place isn't fit for the rats in the subway, and you want to dictate terms to us about our home. Jake! Amanda gasped, finally showing some reaction to his cruelty. No, I'm done pretending. He continued, his face flushed with anger. Your mother is a controlling, manipulative woman who can't accept that you have your own life now. She's using this money to try to buy her way back into our lives, and I won't have it. That's enough, I said, standing up as well. I think you should leave now, Jake. I need to speak with my daughter alone. Anything you have to say to Amanda, you can say in front of me, he insisted. We don't have secrets. Please, Jake, I said, struggling to maintain my composure. Just give us a few minutes. No, Amanda said, suddenly rising to stand beside her husband. Mom, Jake is right. We don't have secrets from each other. And frankly, I'm tired of your passive-aggressive attempts to come between us. I was genuinely bewildered. Come between you, Amanda. When have I ever tried to do that? Every time you call me when Jake's not around, she said. Every time you send me articles about controlling relationships or books about maintaining your identity in marriage. You think I don't see what you're doing? I had indeed sent her such articles concerned about the unhealthy dynamics I observed, but I had never explicitly criticized Jake or tried to undermine their relationship. I only want what's best for you, I said softly. What would make you happy? Jake makes me happy, she declared, taking his hand. Our life together makes me happy. And if you can't accept that, then maybe you shouldn't be part of that life. Her words cut deep, but I refused to let them see me break. I think we're all too emotional right now to make any decisions, I said. Why don't we take a few days to cool down and then... We don't have a few days, Jake interrupted. The offer on the house is due tomorrow morning. Are you helping us or not? Put like that so bluntly and with such clear hostility, I finally reached my limit. Not under these circumstances, I said firmly. Not when you're speaking to me with such disrespect in my own home. Not when you're characterizing my love for my daughter as something toxic and manipulative. So that's it, Amanda said, her voice rising. You're backing out after I told the sellers we had the financing lined up. I'm not backing out, I clarified. I'm saying we need to revisit the terms in a way that respects everyone's concerns. You selfish bitch, Jake said under his breath, but loud enough for me to hear. That was the final straw. Get out of my home, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Now. Gladly, Jake snarled, grabbing his coat. Come on, Amanda, we're leaving. Amanda hesitated, looking between us with tears in her eyes. For a moment, I thought she might stay, might choose to work this out with me. Then her expression hardened. You've never respected my choices, she said bitterly. Not my career, not my husband, not my life. You pretend to support me, but you've always judged everything I do. That's not true, I protested. I've always been proud of you, Amanda. Proud of the version of me you wanted, she countered. Not the person I actually am. Jake was holding the door open, his expression triumphant as he watched my daughter turn against me. I made one last attempt to reach her. Amanda, please, let's not leave things like this. Think of the baby. Don't you dare use my child to manipulate me, she said, her voice cold. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I stepped toward her, desperate to make her understand. Amanda, I would never... What happened next occurred so quickly that I'm still not sure of the exact sequence of events. As I moved toward Amanda, she raised her hands as if to ward me off, but instead of simply creating distance between us, she shoved me, hard. I stumbled backward, losing my balance, and fell against the corner of my dining table. I felt a sharp pain as the edge connected with my temple, and then I was on the floor, warm wetness spreading down my face. I heard Jake's voice, urgent but not concerned. Let's go, now. Through the haze of pain, I saw Amanda staring down at me, her expression shocked. For a moment, she seemed about to help me up. Then Jake's hand closed around her arm and she allowed herself to be pulled away. The door slammed behind them, and I was left alone on the floor of my apartment, blood seeping from the gash on my forehead, wondering how it had all gone so terribly wrong. I'm not sure how long I lay there on the floor, stunned by what had just happened. The pain in my head was sharp and insistent, and when I finally managed to sit up, the room spun alarmingly. I touched my temple and my fingers came away red with blood. The cut was deep, and I knew immediately that it would need medical attention. I tried to stand but felt dizzy and nauseous. I crawled to the coffee table where my phone lay, leaving a small trail of blood droplets on the beige carpet. As I reached for my phone, the doorbell rang, startling me so badly that I nearly passed out. Nancy, are you okay in there? It was Mrs. Castillo from next door. Her voice muffled through the door. I heard shouting and then a loud crash. Help, I called weakly. Please help me. I heard her fumbling with the spare key I'd given her years ago for emergencies. The door swung open and Miss Castillo gasped at the sight of me on the floor, blood streaming down my face. Dios mío, what happened? She exclaimed, rushing to my side. I fell. I said, not wanting to explain the full truth. I hit my head on the table. Mrs. Castillo helped me to the couch and immediately called 911. Within 20 minutes, paramedics were loading me into an ambulance. Miss Castillo promised to lock up my apartment and check on my cat Mittens while I was gone. At the emergency room, a young doctor with kind eyes examined me carefully. "You've got a nasty laceration here," he said, gently probing the area around the cut. "It's going to need stitches, and I'm concerned about the possibility of a concussion. How exactly did this happen?" "I was pushed," I admitted quietly. "During an argument. I lost my balance and hit the corner of my dining table." The doctor's expression changed subtly. "Pushed by whom, if you don't mind my asking?" I hesitated, then said, "My daughter." He nodded without judgment. "I'm going to ask a nurse to come in and take some photographs of your injury for documentation purposes, if that's all right with you." I understood what he was suggesting, creating a record in case I wanted to press charges. The thought made me feel physically ill. "That won't be necessary," I said firmly. "It was an accident." The doctor looked skeptical but didn't push the issue. "You'll need 6 stitches," he told me, "and we should do a CT scan to rule out any serious head trauma." 3 hours later, I was discharged with a bandaged head, a prescription for pain medication, and instructions to watch for signs of concussion. The CT scan had shown no serious damage, just a mild concussion that would heal with rest. A nurse helped me call a taxi, and I gave the driver my address in a voice that sounded distant and unfamiliar to my own ears. Back in my apartment, I surveyed the aftermath of the evening, the half-eaten dinner still on the table, the drops of blood on the carpet, the mortgage papers scattered across the floor. Everything looked surreal, like a scene from someone else's life. I cleaned up mechanically, wrapping the uneaten food in foil and putting it in the refrigerator, although I knew I wouldn't want to eat it later. I scrubbed at the bloodstains on the carpet with cold water and salt, a trick my mother had taught me long ago. Some of the stains came out, others didn't. It seemed fitting somehow. As I was throwing away the bloody paper towels, my phone chimed with a text message notification. It was from Amanda. "Mom, stay away from us. We don't need you interfering in our lives anymore." I stared at the message, reading it over and over again. My own daughter, who I had raised alone, who I had sacrificed everything for, was telling me to get out of her life. And this, after she had physically hurt me, left me bleeding on the floor. Something shifted inside me in that moment. A lifetime of accommodating, of making excuses, of putting Amanda's needs ahead of my own. It all crystallized into a hard, clear resolve. I had been a good mother. I had loved unconditionally. I had given everything I had to give. And it wasn't just unappreciated. It was being thrown back in my face with contempt. I sat down at my kitchen table, my head throbbing despite the pain medication, and typed a one-word reply, "Okay." Then I picked up my phone again and called my bank. It was after hours, but they had a 24-hour customer service line for account holders. I explained that I needed to cancel the mortgage pre-approval and loan guarantee I had arranged earlier that week. "May I ask why you're canceling, Mrs. Wilson?" the representative asked. "Circumstances have changed," I replied simply. "I'm no longer in a position to provide this financial backing." The representative asked several more questions, and I answered, mechanically signing electronic documents they emailed to me to formalize the cancellation. By the time I hung up, it was done. The bank would notify the mortgage broker and the real estate agent in the morning that the financing had fallen through. Next, I called my longtime friend and attorney, Barbara, leaving a detailed message on her voicemail explaining what had happened and asking her to contact me as soon as possible to formally withdraw any financial commitments I had made regarding Amanda and Jake's home purchase. Finally, I wrote an email to the real estate brokerage handling the sale, copying the agent who had been working with Amanda and Jake. I kept it brief and professional, simply stating that I was withdrawing my financial participation in the purchase of the property on West 4th Street, and that any previous commitments made on my behalf should be considered null and void. With each action, I felt a strange mixture of pain and liberation. For the first time in decades, I was putting myself first. It hurt terribly, but there was also a sense of reclaiming something essential that I had surrendered long ago. I took 2 of the pain pills the doctor had prescribed along with a sleeping aid and went to bed. My last thought before drifting off was a memory of Amanda as a little girl sitting on Thomas's shoulders at a county fair, her face alight with joy as she waved down at me. "Look how high I am, Mommy," she had called. "I can see everything from up here." I woke around noon the next day, my head pounding and my mouth dry. For a blessed few seconds, I didn't remember what had happened. Then it all came rushing back. The argument, the push, the fall, the text message, my response. I checked my phone and saw that I had slept through multiple calls and texts. Most were from Amanda and Jake, starting with angry messages accusing me of sabotaging their home purchase, then escalating to threats of legal action, and finally devolving into desperate pleas to call them back. I set the phone aside without responding and made myself a cup of tea. I needed time to think, to process, to decide what came next. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and spent the day moving slowly around my apartment, taking pain medication, and dozing on and off. Around 4 in the afternoon, I decided I needed fresh air and a change of scenery. I packed a small overnight bag called a taxi and booked a room at a modest hotel near the beach about an hour from the city. I left food and water for Mittens and asked Mrs. Castillo to check on him the next day. As the taxi pulled away from my apartment building, I turned off my phone completely. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I was completely untethered from everyone else's needs and demands. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I checked into the small beachfront hotel and took a long walk along the shore as the sun was setting. The rhythmic sound of the waves and the feel of sand between my toes grounded me in the present moment, away from the chaos of the previous night. I had dinner alone at a quiet restaurant, ordered a glass of wine, and watched the last of the daylight fade over the water. Back in my hotel room, I sat by the window looking out at the dark ocean, reflecting on how I had reached this point. I had always prided myself on being a good mother, on putting Amanda first. But somewhere along the way, that devotion had become unbalanced, unhealthy. I had allowed her, and by extension Jake, to treat me with increasing disrespect, all because I feared losing her completely. But I had lost her anyway. The realization brought fresh tears, but they were different from the desperate sobs of the night before. These tears felt cleansing somehow, washing away illusions I had clung to for too long. Around 10 o'clock, curiosity got the better of me, and I turned my phone back on. It immediately began buzzing with notifications. 40 missed calls, dozens of text messages, several voicemails. Most were from Amanda, some from Jake, and a few from numbers I didn't recognize but assumed were the real estate agent and mortgage broker. I scrolled through the text messages, watching the evolution from anger to panic. 8:15 a.m. What did you do? The bank called saying you've withdrawn your guarantee. Call me now. 9:30 a.m. You can't do this to us. We're about to lose our dream home because of you. 11:45 a.m. Jake's talking to his lawyer. You can't legally back out of a commitment like this. 1:20 p.m. Mom, please call me back. We need to talk about this. 3:05 p.m. I'm sorry about last night. I didn't mean to push you. Please call me. 4:30 p.m. Mom, I'm worried about you. No one knows where you are. Please just let me know you're okay. The last message had come just 15 minutes earlier, 9:45 p.m. Mom, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. We need you. I set the phone down without responding and went to bed emotionally and physically exhausted. In the morning, I would have to deal with all of this, but for tonight, I needed rest. The next day, I checked out of the hotel and took a taxi back to the city. I had made my decision during the quiet hours of the early morning, watching the sunrise over the ocean. I would meet with Amanda, alone, and we would talk about what had happened and where we went from here. But things would never go back to the way they were before. Too much had been said, too many lines crossed. I called Amanda from the taxi and suggested meeting at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between my apartment and her office. She agreed immediately, sounding relieved just to hear my voice. As I entered the coffee shop, I caught my reflection in the window glass. The bruise around my stitches had darkened to a deep purple, spreading down to my cheekbone. There was no way to hide it completely, even with the makeup I had carefully applied. But perhaps that was appropriate, a visible reminder of what had transpired between us. Amanda was already seated at a table in the back, her hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. When she looked up and saw me, her face crumpled. I saw her eyes fix on my injury, and genuine horror washed over her features. Mom, she whispered as I sat down across from her. Your face. Yes, I said simply. 6 stitches and a mild concussion according to the doctor. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just so angry and upset, and I reacted without thinking. I understand that, I said, keeping my voice steady. But it happened, Amanda. You pushed me, and then you left me bleeding on the floor. You and Jake walked out without making sure I was okay. I wanted to stay, she said quickly. But Jake said we should go, that you were fine, that you were just trying to manipulate us with guilt. She looked down at her hands. I know now that was wrong. I should have stayed. I nodded, taking a sip of the tea I'd ordered while waiting for her. Why did you text me to stay away from you? Jake took my phone, she admitted, looking ashamed. He sent that text. I didn't know about it until later when I asked to use his phone to call you. I wanted to believe her, but years of watching her gradually adopt Jake's attitudes and actions made me cautious. And the 40 calls yesterday were those all from you. Most of them, she said. Some were from Jake, and some from the real estate agent and mortgage broker. They told us the deal was dead without your financial backing. She hesitated, then added, Jake was furious. He kept saying you had done this deliberately to punish us. And what do you think? I asked. Amanda met my eyes directly for the first time. I think you were protecting yourself after we treated you terribly. I don't blame you for withdrawing your support. I wouldn't want to help someone who had hurt me either. Her words surprised me. This flash of self-awareness seemed so at odds with her recent behavior. What changed between the night before last and now? I asked. She bit her lip, looking uncertain. After we got the news about the financing falling through, Jake and I had a huge fight. He said awful things about you, about how you'd never really supported our relationship, how you were trying to control me through money. And for the first time, I really heard how he talks about you. It made me think about other things. How he talks about my friends, my colleagues, anyone who might influence me separately from him. I listened silently, not wanting to interrupt this moment of clarity. And then, when we couldn't reach you, she continued, when no one knew where you were, I started to get really scared. I kept thinking about you bleeding on the floor, about how I just left you there. What kind of person does that to their own mother? Her voice broke. What kind of person have I become? The question hung in the air between us, raw and painful. I reached across the table and took her hand. You're still my daughter, Amanda. You've made mistakes. Serious ones. But that doesn't define you completely. She squeezed my hand gratefully, tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't know what to do, Mom. Jake and I are having a baby. We're supposed to be building a life together. But after seeing how he reacted when things went wrong, how quick he was to blame you, to threaten legal action, I'm scared. I chose my next words carefully, aware that criticizing Jake directly might push her away again. What does your heart tell you to do? She wiped her eyes with a napkin. I don't know anymore. I love Jake, or at least I thought I did. But the way he's been acting, the things he says when he's angry, it reminds me of stories you used to tell about Uncle Richard. Uncle Richard was my brother-in-law, Thomas's brother, who had been verbally and emotionally abusive to his wife for years before she finally left him. The comparison was telling. Have you talked to anyone else about this? I asked gently. A friend, a therapist. She shook her head. Jake doesn't think therapy is necessary. He says it's just a way for weak people to avoid taking responsibility for their problems. Another red flag, but again I kept my opinion to myself. Well, I think it might help you sort through your feelings, especially with the baby coming. Pregnancy is stressful enough without all this additional conflict. Amanda nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. She looked up at me, her expression vulnerable. I know I have no right to ask anything of you after what happened, but would you come with me to a first appointment? The request touched me deeply. Of course I will, if that's what you want. It is, she said firmly. I need to figure out what's really going on in my marriage, in my head, and I need someone I can trust to help me through that. What about Jake? I asked cautiously, Hub. How will he feel about you seeing a therapist? Her expression hardened slightly. For now, he doesn't need to know. I told him I was meeting you to try to convince you to reconsider the house financing. He thinks I can manipulate you into changing your mind. The casual way she revealed Jake's calculating attitude sent a chill through me, but I kept my face neutral. And what about the house? What will you do now? We'll have to find something smaller in a less expensive neighborhood, she said with a sigh. Jake's parents could help, but he refuses to ask them. He says his father would see it as a failure. She gave a humorless laugh. The irony is that he had no problem asking you. We talked for another hour, making plans for her to see a therapist I knew who specialized in relationship issues. Amanda seemed genuinely committed to exploring the problems in her marriage and understanding how she had allowed herself to become so distant from me. As we were preparing to leave, she touched my arm hesitantly. Mom, about the money. I want you to know that I never saw it as an entitlement or an inheritance. I shouldn't have let Jake pressure you that way. And I'm sorry for everything I said that night. About you trying to control me, about you judging my choices. That was Jake talking, not me. I wanted to believe her, but trust that has been broken takes time to rebuild. Let's take things one day at a time, I suggested. Right now, the most important thing is for you to take care of yourself and the baby. She nodded, then impulsively hugged me, careful to avoid my injured side. I love you, Mom. I'm so sorry for hurting you. I love you too, I replied, holding her close. Always have, always will. But love doesn't mean accepting mistreatment, Amanda. Not from anyone, not even you. She pulled back, looking at me with new respect in her eyes. I understand that now, and I promise it will never happen again. As I watched her walk away toward her office building, I felt a cautious optimism. The road ahead would not be easy, especially with Jake's controlling influence and the baby on the way. But for the first time in years, Amanda and I were communicating honestly. It was a start. That meeting in the coffee shop marked the beginning of a slow, careful rebuilding of my relationship with Amanda. It was also the start of her own journey of self-discovery and healing. True to her word, Amanda began seeing Dr. Eleanor Simmons, the therapist I had recommended. Initially, she told Jake she was attending prenatal yoga classes during those hours, a deception that troubled me, but that Dr. Simmons assured her was sometimes necessary in relationships with controlling dynamics. After a few sessions, Amanda called me, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and revelation. Dr. Simmons thinks Jake shows signs of being emotionally abusive, she said quietly, as if afraid of speaking the words aloud. She's helped me see patterns I never noticed before. How he isolates me, criticizes me, makes me doubt my own perceptions. How do you feel about that assessment? I asked carefully. Terrified, she admitted, because it makes so much sense. It explains why I've felt so anxious all the time, why I started pushing you away, why I've lost touch with all my old friends. Over the following weeks, Amanda continued her therapy sessions and began reconnecting with friends Jake had discouraged her from seeing. We met for lunch once a week, our conversations becoming increasingly open and honest. She shared memories of times Jake had subtly manipulated her, made her feel inadequate, or driven wedges between her and people who cared about her. He always made it seem like he was protecting me, she explained during one of our lunches. Like everyone else had an agenda, and only he truly had my best interests at heart. It happened so gradually that I didn't see how he was becoming the only voice I listened to. The issue of their housing situation remained tense. Without my financial backing, Jake and Amanda had to scale back their expectations significantly. They found a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a less fashionable neighborhood, which Jake resented deeply. He continued to blame me for their downgrade, as he called it, unaware that Amanda was now seeing through his manipulations. As her pregnancy progressed, Amanda became more determined to create healthy boundaries in all her relationships, with Jake, with me, with her colleagues and friends. She began standing up to Jake's controlling behaviors, which led to increasing conflict between them. 3 months after our coffee shop meeting, Amanda called me late one night sobbing. He threw a plate against the wall, she said through tears. Because I said I wanted to have you in the delivery room when the baby comes. He said I was betraying him, choosing you over our family. Are you safe? I asked immediately, already reaching for my car keys. Yes, she assured me. He left to cool off. But Mom, I can't do this anymore. I can't bring a child into this environment. That night, Amanda packed essential belongings and came to stay with me. We converted my small home office into a makeshift bedroom, and I held her as she cried herself to sleep, one hand protectively covering her growing belly. The following weeks were challenging. Jake alternated between rage, tearful apologies, and manipulative promises of change. He showed up at my apartment unannounced, demanding to see Amanda. When she refused, he threatened legal action, claiming I was turning his wife against him. Amanda filed for a temporary restraining order after Jake's behavior escalated to pounding on my door at 2 a.m., waking the entire building. With the help of Dr. Simmons and a lawyer friend of mine, she began the process of separation, all while preparing for the imminent birth of her child. Through it all, I was careful to support without controlling, to offer advice only when asked, to give Amanda space to make her own decisions, even when I disagreed with them. This new dynamic between us was healthier than the enmeshed relationship we had before Jake, or the estranged one we had during her marriage. Amanda's daughter, Sophia, was born on a bright Tuesday morning in October. I was there in the delivery room holding Amanda's hand, witnessing the miracle of my granddaughter entering the world. Jake was not present. Amanda had decided it would be too stressful to have him there given their circumstances. Seeing Sophia's tiny face, her perfect fingers and toes, brought back memories of Amanda's birth. I felt the same overwhelming love, the same fierce protectiveness. But I also felt something new, a determination that this child would grow up in a household free from manipulation and control, whether from her father or from me. In the year that followed, Amanda finalized her divorce from Jake, who eventually moved back to Chicago after a protracted legal battle over visitation rights. She and Sophia moved into a small but comfortable apartment near mine, allowing me to be an active grandmother while still respecting Amanda's independence as a mother. The healing between Amanda and me continued, sometimes in formal settings with Dr. Simmons, sometimes in quiet conversations over tea after Sophia was asleep. We both acknowledged our roles in the dysfunctional patterns of our past relationship. My tendency toward overprotection and sacrifice, her struggle to establish healthy boundaries. I understand now why you canceled the mortgage that night, Amanda told me during one of these conversations. It wasn't about punishment. It was about finally standing up for yourself after years of putting everyone else first. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, I admitted. But it was also one of the most important. It marked a turning point in how I value myself. You taught me something essential, she said, reaching for my hand. That love without boundaries isn't really love at all. It's dependence or control. Real love has room for both people to be whole and separate. As for me, I made changes too. I joined a support group for parents of adult children, where I learned I wasn't alone in my struggles to find the right balance between involvement and interference. I developed new friendships and rekindled old ones that had fallen by the wayside during my years of focusing exclusively on Amanda. I even started dating again, cautiously at first, then with increasing confidence. Thomas would always hold a special place in my heart, but I finally allowed myself to consider the possibility of companionship in my later years. The scar on my temple faded over time, becoming a thin, white line barely visible unless you knew to look for it. But the memory of that night, the pain, the betrayal, the moment of clarity that followed, remained vivid. It served as a reminder of how quickly relationships can fracture when boundaries are violated, and of the courage it takes to establish those boundaries in the first place. Today, as I watch Amanda teaching Sophia how to build a sandcastle on the beach near my new condo, I feel a deep sense of peace. Our journey has been difficult, marked by wounds, both physical and emotional. But we have emerged stronger, wiser, and more authentic in our love for each other. I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to say no. To refuse to participate in unhealthy dynamics, to withdraw support from harmful situations, to stand firm in your own worth and dignity. It isn't easy, and it doesn't always lead to the happy ending we've been fortunate enough to find. But it is necessary. As Sophia runs toward me with a seashell clutched in her tiny hand, her face alight with discovery, I give thanks for second chances and hard-won wisdom. I give thanks for the courage to cancel that mortgage and send that one-word text, okay. Because sometimes healing can only begin when we stop trying to fix everything for everyone else and instead attend to our own broken places. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision between your well-being and family loyalty? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to be reminded that setting boundaries is an act of love for others and for yourself. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to reclaim your own worth.